Welcome to Interviews, hosted by Randy Goodman, Harvey Callis Real Estate, your real estate professional. Get to know our community, our businesses, products, and services that will elevate your life. Please welcome your hostess, Randy Goodman.
Hey everybody, it's Randy here from Harvey Callis Real Estate, and I am here with the lovely Rosemary Ghiz, who is a personal wealth coach, and I can't wait to hear all about it. So thank you for being here, Rosemary.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here this morning.
Well, thank you. And so tell us, what is a personal wealth coach?
You know, I've always had a passion for helping people when it comes to their finances, understanding how their finances work, and just understanding and being more comfortable around money conversations and being a little bit more control about being able to talk with confidence about what it is you want personally and financially. And I've actually been in the same industry. It turns out, I didn't realize until I started looking at it, that I've been in the same industry for a little over 25 years.
Wow.
And I think that's kind of where I got my passion, because I've been in the real estate and mortgage financing industry for all of it. And I think it came kind of naturally for me. Again, kind of looking at it and understanding where I got that passion was I actually grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My relatives, my father, were all entrepreneurs. They were business owners and they were real estate investors. So while I didn't think about that stuff growing up, and I didn't even think about it as a career option, when I came out of university wondering, what do I do next? Like a lot of people, I actually had a lot of things that came into my life that kind of, I guess, aligned things for me. By saying that, what I mean is that I was offered a job right out of university to work in a real estate office. It was an office that was looking to expand, and they wanted to bring on new agents. This particular real estate broker took me under his wing and taught me everything you could ever possibly want to know about real estate. Whether you're buying it, whether you're selling it, whether you're financing it, and even how to do property appraisals, which are basically determining market value on a piece of real estate. So that was actually the beginning of my career. And I discovered also I was a bit of a learning junkie and I wanted to learn more. So I actually went back to school and took a 2-year diploma program on everything to do with real estate, basically, for ease of trying to put a title to it. And from there, I immediately got a job in a trust company, working in mortgages. And in the couple of years that I was with them, I actually worked in a variety of areas around mortgages, commercial mortgages, residential mortgages, appraisals, and actually default insurance or default mortgages as well. It was at a time when the market was really taking a dive and a lot of people were going into default. So I got a real flair for almost every aspect of the industry.
You got quite an exposure there.
Yes. And then from there, I actually ended up going into the government with the housing agency housing agency for the government. And if you remember, Randy, and I'm sure maybe you do, many won't, but it was at the time when they introduced the 5% down program. Do you remember that at all? It was like you needed 25% at the time to buy a property or buy a house. And CMHC, being the housing agency for the government and helping to find affordable housing and help people get into housing, they introduced 5% down. Well, as you can imagine, it exploded and everybody's getting into the market now, which made it wonderful. And it was also at a time when you could actually go to the lender's website and actually apply for a mortgage right there online. You didn't have to walk into a branch. You could actually do it online. Again, that was a big explosion in that whole industry in the market. And with all of that package put together, I then got introduced and brought into the mortgage brokering industry, which, if you think about it, was kind of important because there was just so much out there and there was so much information and there was so many lenders involved and types of lending that you needed that third party outside of the bank. Because I used to get asked all the time, like, why don't you just go work at a bank?
Right.
Good question. But the reality is that by working at a bank, I can only sell that bank's product or service.
Right.
By being a mortgage broker, I'm independent of that bank. I can still bring business to that bank, but I also then have a whole gamut of lenders that fit or better fit my clients.
Right.
So you may not fit with one lender, but you'll fit with another lender.
Rosemary, with all your experiences, why did you choose mortgages to get into?
Just evolved. It just evolved. It was something that I felt was a huge part of how people actually get into housing. You know, like what do I need to qualify? What are the lenders looking for? All of those kind of questions came to mind.
Right.
You know, how do I get into home ownership? Understanding credit, understanding all these things. And that's when I started actually doing workshops and seminars in that area. And it opened a lot of eyes for people, particularly women. Because women didn't have that ability in the past to make those kind of conscious decisions about, I want to buy a house,
Right.
or I'm going to start a business, and all of these things. And as I call it, the evolution of the mortgage, because it evolved. It all evolved over the years. And there's still even questions today about, how do I qualify? What do I need to do? And I think these are areas that I can help, and I can work with my clients and take them through those steps.
Okay, perfect. I love that. So tell us, who would be, like, first tell us, like, what kind of services do you offer? And then I want to know, like, who's the best person to come to you. So tell us what you offer, and then who's that ideal person?
What I offer really is I help empower people. I help empower them understand how their money works, how the financing works, what it takes to actually purchase your first home. There's just so much information out there, and there's so much confusion. And quite often you talk to the wrong people too, you know, everybody has their own opinion about how things are done. And for me, I found it very satisfying and truly blessing that I can actually take someone through the process and walk them through everything they need to know, instead of trying to figure it all out for yourself. Whether it's to purchase your first property, purchase another property, or maybe just want to get into real estate investing, period. And, you know, and then you people that have got the mortgages, right? Everybody's got a mortgage, or who do have a mortgage. It's how to manage the mortgage once you're in it. And people tend not to think about those things. And then all of a sudden, you know, they got to do renovations on their home, or they need equity to do something. Maybe they want to do some renovations. Maybe they want to take money out because their children are getting married and they need some money. All sorts of things come up into play in this. And people don't tend to look at their mortgage as a vehicle to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, it was always about paying down that mortgage and getting rid of the mortgage.
Right.
Instead of using that as a tool to build your wealth and build your growth around finances. And when I close a mortgage with clients, they know that I'm there for the long haul. So if they're in their mortgage and they've got questions, they know they can call me.
So I want to interject for a sec, because you're saying, you know, you're talking about leveraging their equity in their home, but I know there's a lot, and there's been a lot of involvement about that, but there's a lot of people who are still very fearful. They only believe in paying my mortgage down and then I feel good. Then it'll be great. Everything will be wonderful when I pay my mortgage down. What about the people, you know, and this is in my industry as well, or in the same industry, but mortgages versus the actual real estate property. But talking to people about being able, like investors, you know, when they have property that's paid down, or even just homeowners who are thinking, you know, what can I do with this money? But a lot of them have a huge fear about tapping into that money, and oh no, I'll have a mortgage again, and oh no, I'll, like, what do you say to people like who have that fear, because it's pretty, you know, rampant out there as
It
far as
is.
people's mindset goes around money, around mortgages, around leveraging, you know, it's pretty big.
You're right, it is. And that's part of what I'm actually very passionate about. It's like, you know what? Let's sit down and kind of educate you. Let me help you understand the process, understand being confident around your growing your money.
Right.
For instance, you know, for women in particular, women have evolved immensely, but there's still that mindset around, well, I need a co-signer. I need a partner. I can't buy a house by myself. Who says you can't buy a house by yourself? Just because that's the way it was a habit. It was something that was instilled in you when you were younger, that, you know, mortgages are bad. I can still remember the day, and of course it's going to age me, where, you know, like you said, pay down the mortgage burning parties.
Right.
And people would sit there with this house that's, you know, $500,000, and there's no mortgage on it because they paid it down because that's what you do.
Right.
And then they start borrowing money outside of it. Or they'll
Right.
take from their RSPs, or they'll, you know, get a line of credit because, you know what, I got to do renovations.
Mm.
And I've had to sit down with them and explain to them what they're doing and why the difference.
Right.
That, you know, their debt load is going like this. Their
Yeah.
credit cards are going like this because they're putting everything on those. And it's really education. It's helping people understand and be more empowered around money and how it works.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, because you're mentioning borrowing money to do these things or using their credit cards or whatever, but the reality is the mortgage rates are so low, and even when they're not low like they are today, they're still lower than a credit card debt or any other kind of debt.
I have
Easily borrow against your house.
I have a client. She's a senior citizen. No mortgage, no debts, one tiny little credit card. You know, in a house worth, you know, close to $500,000.
Mhm.
And she was borrowing money to do renovations.
Right.
And it's really hard to change that mindset
Mm-hmm.
with people, but you have to kind of sit down with them. And I said to her, I said, go into your bank, you know, because I want her to hear from someone they deem as being smarter than you, actually.
Right.
Because they're the bank, they know. So I said,
Right.
go into the bank and ask the banker about what you should do. And I'm sorry, but the answer kind of blew me away. And I think it might have been the fact that this person went into the bank with this mindset of, I don't want a mortgage, it's too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Because what she came out with was, yes, mortgages are too expensive. So they gave me a line of credit to do the work. And I said, okay, like a secured line of credit then, meaning she secured it against the property at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, she didn't. It was a personal line of credit based on her own income and her own ability.
Uh-oh.
And she was only able to get so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her why, like what was going on behind it. But I think she was kind of steering the conversation on what she wanted.
Right.
Which was no mortgage.
Right.
And somebody told her, well, a mortgage is too expensive. You know what the rates are, right?
Right.
And I said, what do you mean too expensive? Well, you need a lawyer. You have to get a lawyer to register the mortgage, and there's costs involved with a lawyer, a lot of money. Then you have to refinance your property, so you have to get an appraisal done. And appraisals cost a lot of money. So they were giving her all this negative, which, that's why a lot of people kind of back away and say, no, I don't want to do that. So she took out a line of credit for 8%.
Oh.
When mortgage rates were at 3%.
Right.
It's just a matter of sitting with people and showing them the numbers, showing them the difference between this and what this looks like. In a lot of things, it's just a matter of understanding, but it's also a matter of a lot of people, and I tell people this all the time, stop talking to the plumber about fixing your roof.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you're asking the wrong people for advice. And then you ask too many people and you get too much advice.
This is true. And then you get confused and you do nothing. So who would be the right person to reach out to you? What's happening in their life? What's going on with them where they should be reaching out to you?
I've put a focus in on women.
Okay.
Because women in the past have always been kind of put behind as far as finances, of being in control of their finances, understanding how all this stuff works, and being told that you need someone outside to help you with that. Like buying a property. In the past, a woman wouldn't walk into a bank or couldn't walk into a bank and say, I want to buy real estate. They would look at her and laugh and say, okay, do you have a co-signer?
Right.
But I have since worked with a lot of women that have become so empowered that, you go into the bank and you tell them what you want, not what they think you want or what they think you need. The same with financial advisors. Sit down with a couple of them, interview them. This isn't about here. Someone put me in touch with you and I'm going to give you all my money and you're going to invest it for me. I want women especially to walk into a bank and say, this is what I want, or this is my goal. This is what I want to achieve, and go from there. Right. Because it's hugely powerful. I had a situation a number of years ago where a young woman came into me and she had 3 little babies with her. And she was looking to get empowered. She wanted to understand things. And she was actually looking at possibility of maybe going through a divorce. And I think that's a huge market there for me as well, because a lot of women, they get told what's going to happen. They get told this is what's going to happen. And in this case, they told her that your house has to be sold in the division of assets. Right. So she was scared. Like, what do I do? I want to keep my house. I want to stay there. My kids, I've got little children.
She needs to be speaking to the lawyer, not the banker.
Exactly. So, and that's what I told her. I said, I'm not the lawyer here, but you need to. But what I did effectively in this case was, we sat down, we talked about her needs, her wants, her income, her expenses, all of those things. And without going into a long story, at the end of our meeting, she walked out there knowing that she could afford to keep the house because she could afford to carry the mortgage on her own and pay it out. So now she's walked out of my office saying, I'm going to go see my lawyer and I'm going to tell him we're not selling the house. We're going to divide it. Yes, absolutely. But I'm going to keep the house.
Right. So who's the ideal person? So they're women?
Women.
What else?
They're looking to grow. They're looking to change. They're starting new businesses, for instance. And that's another area. Women now are starting new businesses every day. Women are also looking to buy real estate as investment properties, not just to live in.
Yes.
So these are things that are very powerful for women, and it's important that a lot more women understand this, because they still have that mindset. They still have all those people around them telling them what they should or shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what kind of tips and suggestions can you give to everybody?
There's a couple of things I think about when I think about, tips and whatever, but the one thing is to learn, take on knowledge, and understand how all of these things work. Understand what do the banks need, or what are they looking for to qualify you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you qualify for a mortgage? How much do you qualify for?
Right.
And at the end of the day, when you know this, it gives you a little bit more strength and power, especially if they're going to talk to someone like yourself and say, okay, I want to buy a house. Instead of wasting time and wasting energy, they know exactly how much they qualify for, and then you can match them up with the right property. The second tip that I have has to do with mortgage renewals. And it's something people don't talk about very often.
Right.
And every mortgage, in Canada at least, has a term attached to it, meaning that they have fixed a rate for a particular term, maybe say up to 5 years. And generally, most people take 5-year term.
Right.
Recently, it kind of came to my mind, and one of my past clients came to me and said, okay, my mortgage is coming up for renewal. I got a letter from my bank that says, congratulations, Randy, your mortgage is coming up for renewal. Don't worry about it. I know you're busy. Here are the current rates. Just check which one you are, sorry, the current rates and the terms. So pick the term you want and you're good to go. 5 years, you don't have to think about it. Unfortunately, that's probably the worst advice that a lender can give you. It doesn't speak to your needs and wants, it speaks to theirs, which means fix that in for another 5 years and we're good.
Right.
For the customer, the client, that's the time to reassess. That's the time to look at your finances, look at your situation. What's going on in your life? What is your plan? Are you thinking you might sell the house in 3 years?
Right.
Well, if you're going to sell the house in 3 years, you don't want to be locking it in for 5. Or maybe you need renovations done on your property. Maybe the roof needs to be fixed. These are things that at the renewal is the time to sit and look at that and determine what you need.
Right.
Because there's no penalties and all that attached. Know your mortgage and know what you want and lock it in for whatever period you want, but also deal with, maybe you've got a debt load that you want to clear off. Maybe you've got, renovations that need to be done. Or maybe your children are getting married and you need to pull money out to take care of that. These are all things to look at, and you do it at the renewal, not in the middle of the mortgage.
Right. Yeah, I know people who've been burnt like $40,000 in penalties because they didn't know that, just because they were deciding to sell their house and they happened to be smack in the middle of that 5-year term, they're going to get hit with a monster penalty. And I think that's something that, just to add to what you're saying, is something they should be looking at the beginning and finding out, what would my penalties be should I decide to sell midway through my mortgage, or should I need to refinance, or should I need to whatever? What are my penalties going to be? Because I know the mortgage broker, mortgage agent is going to be able to help you find the right mortgage and decide on which one to minimize those penalties, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, definitely
And that
important to get
happens
educated.
so rarely where people actually take that time, because as I mentioned, the banks make it real easy for you to just sign and go.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be the worst advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So another
They
thing
can
to
still
think
stay
about.
with their current lender. I'm not saying move it. I'm saying know your situation and evaluate.
So Rosemary, I also know, like on a personal level, it's really important for you to give back to society. I know you've been part of the Toronto Women's Expo many a time as a volunteer, and I thank you for that. Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about what's important to you about giving back and the ways that you like to give back.
I've been giving back in several different ways, through volunteer work, homeless shelters, as well as being on committees for different things.
Nice.
But things that are close to me, I've done work with Habitat for Humanity, for instance, homeless, and also one of the big charities through my company is on stopping bullying.
Right.
Bullying is huge, and it needs to be stopped. And there's a lot of other different ones. I volunteered with Heart and Stroke for a while. So, and giving back to the community where I've done volunteer work and sponsorship for a local hockey team, for instance, junior hockey team, and being able to help them just by being part of things. It helps with the awareness of even just what a mortgage broker does. A lot of people still are a little fearful about that outside person that's not the bank.
Right.
And the reality is that you need to understand there's choice, there's options, and not everybody, not every mortgage is going to fit you. And people say, well, what about, I want the best interest rate. Well, frankly, it's not about interest rate. It's about the terms and conditions that are connected to the mortgage that you're signing.
Right. Okay, awesome. So how do people get a hold of you?
There's several different ways, but you know what? I like the personal touch. I love it when people just pick up the phone and say, you know what? I want to talk to you about this. Or they can text me on my number as well, and email me are the best ways. I do have a website, and it's I'll put it in the chat, but it's rosemaryghiz.com.
Okay.
And my phone number and email is probably the best and the fastest, and I will get back to you as fast as I can. Okay,
awesome. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you so much for sharing with us. There was a lot of good insight there, education, and I can see you're very passionate about it.
I've been in it a long time, and I've seen all the waves. I've seen all the ups and the downs, and particularly now with COVID, there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of anxiety out there, and people are losing their jobs and all sorts of things. So it's important for people like myself and others to sit down with people and say, listen, you know what? There's nothing you can do. You don't panic. Don't stop making payments. Just work with your lender, work with the people around you to get them to help you to come up with strategies. Absolutely. And brokers do that for you too as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much again for sharing with us, Rosemary.
Thank you. Appreciated being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this interview hosted by Randy Goodman. We hope you will take action and connect with the incredible business people and leaders in our community. And remember, Randy is always here to answer any questions you have regarding your real estate needs. Be sure to register on the website and stay up to date on what's happening in your area at parkbench.com/millpond.